Woo! It's great to be here. We could do a little dance show to start off. That was the best walkout music, wasn't it? It's great stuff.
So good.
It's great to be here. Hello, everybody. I'll do a quick intro of myself, and then we'll get to our conversation with Ed here.
Try not to be distracted by the setting.
We'll take it in. We have the crowd, the Brooklyn Bridge. What a beautiful city, and thank you for the sunshine coming through right now. It was a little cloudy earlier. So I am Charman Hayes, Executive Vice President of People and Capability, MasterCard Technology. I am a proud Brooklynite, so is Brooklyn in the house? I got to do that, all right? A couple of y'all, I see you. Hey, here we go, Brooklyn. I am a proud mother. I have 2 children, 2 girls who are 10 and 13, proud wife. Been with my wife for 22 years, and 22 years and going. We've been married for 16, and someone asked me at a dinner last night, how do you make it 22 years? And I said, we just take it one day at a time, and we're better together. So that's a little bit about me. And now on to you, Ed. Before we start our talk, I get asked a lot of questions at dinners and parties with friends. Can you give me that credit card with the miles? Can you increase my credit limit? And I take about 2 minutes and I say, well, we don't exactly issue the credit cards. So I wonder if before we get to talking about AI as our CTO of MasterCard, why don't you tell us who we are? Who's MasterCard?
Who's MasterCard, what we do, and AI is a big part of that. And yeah, I get that all the time. It's like, yeah, I can't help you with that. Now, Lowe could help you with that because Capital One has some great MasterCards they'd be happy to give you. But what we do, more than anything else, is we make it all work. That's the purpose of the technology. The foundation of MasterCard has always been the network and systems we run to make all of that happen. And it really is amazing when you think about the scope we have. We're in 210 countries and jurisdictions around the world. We have well over 100 million merchants that are connected to the system, about 3.5 billion accounts on the network. And so we'll do about 150 billion transactions we'll auth, clear, and settle each year. But it's not just the payments, it's everything we need to do to make that happen. So in order to fight fraud, to protect consumers, we have a trillion parameter AI-based system that we run in the network to protect every transaction for that. We have things we do. We work with merchants to help them build their businesses, small businesses to grow, consumers for loyalty, financial inclusion to bring people into the financial system. And that's really the purpose of the technology. So we talk a lot at MasterCard about how we're powering economies. You know, we run critical national infrastructure in countries around the world. But also, more importantly, we're empowering people. We're helping them do that. So, having been asked that question a lot, too, it was brought home to me many, many years ago when my children asked me, so what do you make? It's like technology at MasterCard should make something. And I realized, and I think this applies to every organization that everyone here is in part of, particularly as technologists. What we make are promises. What we make is systems that people can trust for what's most important to them, and they can trust us with their data and information. So the fact that you can get on a plane and land anywhere in the world, and you know your MasterCard will get you in the car, it'll get you to your hotel. If you need things for your family late at night, you know it's going to work. If you shop online, you know you have zero liability because the systems we put in place to protect you. When I leave here and take the Lexington Avenue line, I got 180 milliseconds to open that gate, and you know it's going to open, and we're going to get you home. So I think in the end, that's what all the technology's for. It's the promises we make and how we keep it to people.
Awesome, that's great. We power economies, and we empower people. So Ed, you're the CTO of MasterCard. You've been with MasterCard for about 20 years. We've been working together for a few years. But before MasterCard, you were a bit of an entrepreneur, and you ran a few businesses. Before we get deeper into AI, why don't you tell us about your career journey, and how do you keep your skills fresh as a CTO?
Career journey. Well, one thing, and I know at conferences you're always supposed to say, you know, change is a constant, which actually is true. But it's also completely trite. Because I think we always look at change as the external things. We think about how technology is changing or societal changes. What's as if not more important is how you change and where you are. So I was just at our tech hub in Dublin, and I was talking with some of our starters, and I was telling them when I left university, I don't know if the same is for some of you, when I left university, I went straight into coding because I thought I could have a challenging and rewarding career and not have to talk to people. Now, I can only code for fun. They don't let me do it in anger, and all I do, it seems, is talk to people. I went straight into startup because I had said I'd never work for another large institution, and now I work for one of the biggest. So I think that idea of things are constantly changing and how you change with it is the essential. And more than anything else, you have to stay curious, right? When I see a system I'm qualified to actually work on, it makes me very nervous. And that's a great thing. So as the world keeps changing, how do you build your experiences? At MasterCard, I've been able to do anything from running the franchise during the financial crisis, to helping set up our product organizations, to leading technology through the digital transformation. But in all of those, you learn and you build on that. So as each new thing happens, as each new innovation, new technology, new capability, new opportunity comes, you can bring to it everything you've learned. You can be incredibly curious about what it does and what it can let us do better. But most importantly, you can recognize that the whole purpose of it is, like I said earlier, for what we're doing and for what we're creating for. So I think that ability to recognize in yourself how the world's changing around you, how you're changing, and how you stay curious, you stay engaged, and you're constantly bringing in all the new things, but building on all the experiences you can bring to bear for that. And you know, when I think about that's sort of the personal journey. But there's something else I learned, and we talk about this a lot, so I'm actually going to come back to you on this one. Because when you do a startup, you literally have nothing. You have no brand, you have no product, you have no customers, you have no revenue. All you have are the people who show up every day to try to create something out of nothing through sheer force of will. And it makes you understand, even if you're at a MasterCard, everything we have is built on everything that people have done over years to advance it. So as all of this change happens, actually, when we were getting ready to do our tech strategy for MasterCard's board in April, was it? I got this from Charman, so I'm stealing it. You know, at the end, every technology strategy is actually just a people strategy. All the tech's available to everyone. Hell, most of it's open source these days. Again, what it matters is who we are and what we choose to do with it. So when you think about all the technologists working across MasterCard that we're both responsible for, how do you think about them adapting to change? How do you think about the work's changing, the workplace is changing, how we use it responsibly? Like, how do you bring everyone along as things change?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's about constantly having skills that are fit for purpose, that are ready for market, and help you to deliver what MasterCard needs. And when we think about us empowering people and powering those economies, the skills are constantly changing, whether it be AI, machine learning, blockchain, whether it be data synthesizing, whether it be prompting. It's so important to stay fresh. And so one of the things we do is we look at bite-sized learning, and we look at smaller chunks of opportunities to learn as opposed to somewhat expansive, immersive learning opportunities. We have those too, but primarily we look at bite-sized learning to give colleagues real chunks when they need it on demand,
Right.
so that they can have it available. We leverage our technology hubs. You talked about Dublin, a place that's near and dear to both of us. And we have 7 technology hubs around the world that focus on technology, that focuses on the employee digital experience, and gives colleagues community and a place to be. When we think about our tech hubs, it's the place that colleagues are oftentimes trying to go. We're oftentimes trying to find the right seats for the right people in that location. And so our tech hubs are central, and it really is the embodiment of our culture. And then the last thing I'll say in terms of skills development is we have an internal marketplace. It's called Unlocked. It's an internal marketplace, and it brings together skills, it brings together roles and opportunities, and it brings together our colleagues. We have 30,000 employees at MasterCard, and over 90% of our colleagues are on the platform.
Yeah.
And they use the platform to connect to other assignments. they connect to mentors, and they connect for opportunities. And one key piece of the Unlock platform, it's AI, and it helps create those opportunities so that people can get the things that they want. And we like to say it, prevents people from staying in their lane. It really helps colleagues go from lane to lane, and it's permissible in a safe space. And so AI is a big piece of that. AI helps bring that together. And so Ed, I want to turn it back to you to tell us about how we use AI to create solutions and to power the economy and keep us all safe, creating value for our customers.
So one thing, and a great, speaking to everyone as technologists everywhere, we have been using, and I'm sure many of you have been working with AI for years now, and have already seen tremendous benefits from it. When I get the question, when is AI going to have a big impact for your business? You say, I don't know, a decade ago? So one of the things that have always benefited us is because we were dealing with structured information, we had an incredible business purpose, is the ability to apply AI to move from relatively rigid rules-based systems to model-based systems for things like fighting fraud. So just from moving from rules to the real-time AI engine I talked about earlier, our trillion parameter brain that we have running in the network, we're able to not only stop 3 times as much fraud, about $20 billion a year. And again, that's not potential. That's when they gave up and tried a different tactic on us. Not only are we stopping all that fraud, we had a 6x improvement in false positives. So that's you trying to do what you wanted to do, that goes through the network because we can make much better predictions about what's there. So we've already seen a tremendous transformative impact from AI. Now, it always accelerates, it always changes. So if a few years ago, right, the deep neural networks and backpropagation, TensorFlow is the end of history, suddenly is now sort of supplanted or overtopped by what we can now do with the large language models. And again, the question becomes, this is just new technology. It's another club in the bag. It's another thing that we can apply to very specific problem sets. And I actually think it's our responsibility as technologists not to get caught in that trap of how can I use this cool new thing? But what's the thing we could never do before that we can now do because it exists? What the things that's 10 times better that you can apply the technology to? And sometimes we try to force fit it in rather than using all of our knowledge and experience to say, here's where it's better. We have a new model we're putting out there, and it's showing about a 20% improvement in fraud detection. We call it our Decision Intelligence Pro. I don't know. And one of the first questions I got was like, well, is it generative? And it's like, I don't know. It's a recurrent neural network. It's kind of a generative technique. Oh, good. And then everyone was fine with it, right? We're missing what you're using it for and what it does for that. Now, all that said, I do think there is a new era of promise, because dealing with unstructured information in ways we couldn't before, having a natural language interface to interact with human and the human-computer interaction that can now enable, that's amazing too. And I think we're really exploring to see where the benefits are we can come from that. With, as technologists, understanding that balance, it is punishingly expensive to run an inference engine at real time at the production speeds we run. So you always have to start and work back from the value, not forward from the capability. But one great example, I really love this one, is we work a lot with merchants, with retailers to help improve their business. And we have one we did, it was called Shopping Muse. Because one of the great things that generative tools can do is they can take inputs and give you a lot of prototypes. They can give you a lot of things for the human to then be able to react to and interact with. So you can describe to it, I'm going to this type of party at this location in this evening, what do you think I should wear? And get a range of options presented that you can then filter through. So it's figuring out how that capability solves problems in new ways, and I think amazing things can happen there. But there's one overarching theme, and I know we've talked about it a lot earlier today, and I think it has to be the guidepost for everything we're doing. And I think it comes back to that conversation we had about trust and the promises we make earlier, right? We've always held that the only use of AI is responsible use of AI. It's the ethical use of what we do, how we take the information that consumers have entrusted with us and make sure we're good stewards of that information. And this is where none of this is new. We were a founding member of the Harvard Kennedy School Council for Ethical Use of AI in 2017. So, Charman, maybe I'd ask you, when you think about the policies we're putting in place, it gets back to not what only the capability is, but who we are and what we choose it for. how are we working with employees to make sure we have the right responsibilities, the right inclusivity, the privacy protections in place to guide how we're using the new technology?
It's so important, and when we think about the importance of data, I was with just a moment ago, we were with our chief data officer, and he said, look, 75% of this is about the data. When we talk about AI, we were just having lunch. And I think you said it, it's about being stewards of the data. We are stewards. Our consumers trust us, they trust MasterCard. And when we use the data, we're going to use data for good, to make sure that it supports the communities in which we operate, to make sure that it creates value for our customers, for our consumers, and we're going to do it with a certain set of principles, which is going to guide us. We've been doing this for decades. Our CEO, Michael Meeback, was giving a talk last Friday, and he said, we've been doing AI for 20 years now. We are enhancing that, and obviously we're doing a lot more. And as we think about it, it's about being strategic. It's about protecting this data and safeguarding it. It's about using the data that we have from a perspective of AI that is compliant with the regulatory environment. We all know what's happening now from a regulatory perspective, and we want to be compliant with that, and we want to do what's right, certainly from a legal perspective, certainly from a risk mitigation standpoint. That's how we use data. From an integrity standpoint, Ed, right? And you were the chair of our Pride Network for many years, and thank you so much for being an ally and an executive sponsor.
Yes, thank you.
Means the world to us, and no one even asked you to do that. I think you were in a board meeting, you said, well, if someone needs to do it, I'm going to do it.
Amen.
So it's great, and when I think about that in the context of AI and the integrity and making sure that we don't perpetuate stereotypes, that we don't do things that are going to be detrimental to certain communities, and that we do it along with the communities in which we operate. So from a data principles perspective, many of those things guide us. We want to make sure that we innovate. We want to innovate with intention. We don't want to innovate for innovation's sake. We want to move at the right pace. One of our core principles as a firm, when we think about the MasterCard way, is move fast. That's one of the key things that we say. We want to create value, grow together, and move fast. In the context of AI, we're not just going to move as fast as we can. We're going to move at the right pace, and we're going to protect that data to safeguard it. And so AI continues to be important, and we will also recognize the communities in which we work with, in which we support from a MasterCard perspective. And this community piece, Ed, is really, really important. When we think about our culture, we have a very, very high engagement. We've received a number of external recognitions about our culture, about certainly having a very, very high engagement rate, very, very high retention. Our culture is kind of special. And when I think about that, you're certainly emblematic of that culture. You've been a very, very brave leader for many of us, and leading in a very bold way for the past 20 years. Why don't you tell us about what's special about our culture and how that enables our colleagues to innovate and use AI?
Yeah, I think you really touched on the heart of, we talk a lot about decency, we talk a lot about doing the right thing. We've published a consumer, I would encourage this for your organizations, we've published a consumer bill of rights to say when you do business with us, you have the right to know the information you have. We'll use that information to make the services you get from us better. You will always understand where we are with it, and we will make sure we do that. When we've invested in AI technologies, we started with things like understanding how do we have bias detection, how you can prevent things like concept drift in your models after they've been running for a while and seeing what's out there. So again, as technologists, our job is to take these things that other parts of the business will have difficulty, I think, understanding in depth, no matter how much enthusiasm they may have for it conceptually, and make sure we're doing it right. So one of the elements of leadership I was taught is you have to make sure that people who you'll never get a chance to talk to will always make the right decision. So that's why the principles that we talk about with the MasterCard way is so important, and how do we do that? And I'd like to talk about it a little more. I mentioned earlier, we truly do operate around the world. We have people in well over 100 countries. And your principles, your ethics are not situational. So the things we've done to advocate for things like marriage equality in the US means you have to advocate for Section 377 in India and the work we did there, the supports we do for things like Lambda Legal in order to do that. So this idea of creating an environment where employees are supported for everything we're doing. So we have both guilds, So if you're a data scientist, you can connect to data scientists across MasterCard. If you're a software, or a reliability engineer, you can connect to others who share your passion. The same goes to what we call our BRGs. So almost 20 years ago, we founded the Pride Group at MasterCard. So people could connect and they could talk and they could discuss, and you get that networking. We have what we call the MasterCard Inclusive Growth, where we've put over $450 million into companies and into countries, over 100 countries around the world, to help bring people into financial systems, to support sustainable economic development. And I think most importantly, it also gives people the opportunity to take their insights, our capabilities, and create new things. So the touch card for people who are vision impaired to help understand, which instrument they're using. Or one of my personal favorites that we launched with for the 50-year Stonewall celebration is MasterCard's True Name card, where it's the ability to get a card, a MasterCard, with who you truly are, with your representation on it, regardless of what's on the legal documents. And that's the thinking. Well, actually, can I talk about this one a little bit more? Because
Please
there's
do.
a good engineering
Absolutely.
story here, too. So you asked earlier about the things you're able to do across my career. So at one point, I ran the global franchise for MasterCard. And there was something in our rules, which goes back to a very dark time, almost 50 years ago, when in some states, a married woman could not get a credit card on her own. So there's this weird little thing in the rules that said a cardholder could get a card with a different name on it, which was put in place because of that horrible bias and discrimination that existed over 50 years ago. Well, fast forward to now, we're able to use the exact same parameter, the same setting, the same capability to allow people to express who they truly are. So I just think it's an eminently hopeful thing. But it also comes from really understanding the systems and how they work so you can apply it to make things better. And I think that idea of how you look at the capabilities you have, how you take the culture, the decency that you want to have, and you say, how can we apply it to make things better for people?
Absolutely, and thank you for sharing that example. And when I think about, the importance of allowing our customers to show up with their whole selves, allowing our employees to show up as their whole selves. It's one of the reasons that I chose MasterCard nearly 3 years ago, and I made a phenomenal choice to join a great company, and it has really just opened up my world and helped me to understand more about financial ecosystem, how we drive, how we power the economy. It's been really a phenomenal experience for me, and so thank you for your leadership. My last question before we go is a bit of a personal one, and you talked about your career and obviously being CTO and how you've run companies externally, and I know you're an entrepreneur, but what drives you personally to be such an advocate, Ed? I know you're an engineer by training. You have other engineers in your family. Is there anything you want to share with us about why you're so passionate about advocating for this community?
That was a personal question. We talk all the time, but usually not in a forum like this. So, personal. Well, maybe a couple of things, because there's no big big switch here. So one of the things I'll say, I was very fortunate, because you will never truly understand, and I know this is another person's situation, but you can empathize. You can try to understand what it is. So I was raised by indomitable Irish women, which just helps you from the start, from a foundation setting. And I'll give you 3 quick examples.
Sure.
So one of the most amazing people I know is my oldest sister. She is stockingly brilliant. She's incredibly focused. When she was finishing her medical residency at Yale, she was working at Yale New Haven Medical Center. And I called her one night, and that day, one of the World War II vets refused to be seen by her because he wanted a real doctor. And just how hurt, how angry, how offended she was by that. And of course, my immediate reaction is, let the bastards die. But someone disrespects your sister, that's how you play it.
Right.
But then I thought about it more, and how tragic that this person was so limited that one of the most qualified people in the world was dedicating her life to try to help him, and he couldn't even see it. And how big a loss it was for him, aside from what it meant to my sister. My daughter, we were just talking about this one, this one. was going into doctoral programs, and she was fortunate enough to have a number of great options for her. And she turned down one of the ultimate bold-faced name programs because she felt it was a toxic bro house and
what
wanted
was
no
she?
part
She's
of
getting
it.
her PhD, right?
Computer science.
That's right,
Yes,
computer
it's
science. There you go.
PhD in computer science. And she turned down a program, which, you know, as a dad, you're like, are you sure? And she said, yeah, she just didn't want to be there. So good for her and their loss. And that's what's going to play out over time. And one more quickly, because this really did guide me. So again, I was lucky. My first day of my freshman year at university, a friend I met on the hall was a lesbian. So I got to spend my time with all sorts of folks as I was going through school. And then when we graduated, and this was in the late 80s, and it was a really dark time, I could see how people had to self-edit, how they were afraid of, because if they truly expressed who they are, they wouldn't get to do the things they wanted to do or be as successful as they could be. And it was a terrible thing. So I think that's why I've always been so fierce in allyship and advocacy, because I got nothing to lose, man. I can say it. So the ability to say, I don't want to hear that, or you're better than that, because I never knew who was in the room, who was thinking that, but wouldn't feel comfortable saying that. So you do that every time. And then as you get the chance to get more responsibility, you can do things like create the environment for your team. I was on the benefits committee for MasterCard, and the ability to say our benefits will be equal for everyone, regardless of their life situation. And here's how we're going to go after that. We've talked about some of the other advocacy things that we've been able to do, creating things like the True Name Card because we can. So I think for all of us, you learn from that experience. And not only is it the right thing to do, not only is it the moral and ethical responsibility, I can also say, think about that from a commercial standpoint. Think about that person who didn't get the best care possible because they were so blind to see what it was. You know, so I want to make sure we're a place where everyone feels like they can bring their best, where everyone can show up with no constraint and work together around that. One of my personal hearings, we talked about AI. Let's close the loop. We talked about AI earlier. Alan Turing, I've read the papers. Unbelievable mind. Who would not want them in your shop bringing their best to help invent the future? So not only is it the right thing to do, it is so amazingly important for the organization to be successful, to have us all able to work together the way we want to. And that's how you invent the future. And to go all the way back to where you started, that's how you know you can focus on what's important and do the right thing for all the people you serve.
Holy, thank you. Right. Thank you, Ed. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure to be here. Happy Summit. Thank you for having us, and we will see you next
Take care.
time.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks a lot.